What's up, guys? 3-0 sweep of the board yesterday. Easy wins on all three, too. That's the type of day you love to see. Minnesota T-Wolves, easy win. Easy wins in both MLB totals, as my MLB full game totals continue to be insanely good. An over in the Milwaukee and St. Louis game yesterday, and the under in the afternoon game between Miami and Chicago Cubs. No sweat in any of those, really. And the day was over before like 6 p.m. my time, and got to go to the Bruins game and watch them demolish Toronto in game one. Very fun time. Fun as hell. We'll move on to today. I actually do not have any MLB totals today, unfortunately, because you know me, I mostly like unders. And as I said, I've been killing it with these MLB totals. I think I'm 11-0 now or something like that with full game MLB totals. They're just the situations I look to play unders. Like I do lean to the under in White Sox Philly with Nastrini going for the White Sox because he hasn't been seen before against Nola, who is just a good pitcher for Philly. I like the under there, but it's a very low total, 7.5, which is indicating that the odds makers pretty much are telling you, hey, this is probably going to be a low scoring game. But my problem in that one is the bullpen situation. It was a high-scoring game yesterday, so I actually like that as far as the under, but then I look at the teams having used too many relievers, and I just can't do it. And then I was also looking at the Houston-Washington game to go under. That total is dipped down from 9.5 to 9, juice to the under. It looks like there is money coming into the under there. You got Christian Javier pitching for Houston. He has dominant numbers against Washington's hitters. And Washington, I don't think, has a good offense anyway. And then on Washington's side, Mitchell Parker, the guy whose name I forgot the other day, making his second Major League start ever after a pretty good Major League debut, and a lefty. So I think he's going to have a little bit of an edge early on against these Houston hitters who have never seen him before. So that looks like an under type of play as well. The problem is both of those bullpens got rocked yesterday, or at least they got used up quite a bit. So I can't bring myself to playing a full game under in either of those games, very unfortunately, just because of the bullpen situations and the way that the first 5 inning unders have gone so far for me. I just don't think I can even I can't even do it, man. You could get under in the first 5 innings, under 4.5 at like even money in that game right now, though. Let's start with NHL, I guess. Why not? Toronto, Boston. Boston obviously took the first game last night when I was there. Looked quite good, man. The atmosphere felt different for the Bruins than it did last year. Last year, Bruins, of course, they had the historically good record. They just didn't seem to be mentally that tough to me. The crowd didn't seem like it was as crazy last year. I went to game 1 last year, which they won, but the crowd just didn't seem as nuts as they did last night. The Bruins last night seemed more physical. There just seemed to be more intensity from both the team and the crowd. So hopefully that keeps up. I mean, I don't really have high hopes still. I don't think that the Bruins are really going to get that far here. But it was good to see last night at the very least. And then the Carolina Hurricanes, really, I don't think they played that well against the Islanders, and they still won with another very good defensive performance from the Islanders, from the Hurricanes there. And for the Bruins, Swayman was in net. The Bruins have this weird goaltender tandem situation where they play each goalie like 50% of the time. I think you do kind of need like that guy who's that number one guy, but I don't know. But Swayman started game 1 for them. It was Allmark last year. Swayman last night, excellent game. He was the top star of the game or whatever, and the 3 stars, had a ton of saves, really high save percentage. Toronto actually outshot them. But yeah, those were the 2 NHL games yesterday. Today, 4 more NHL games, Tampa and Florida. That series starts. Florida's up from -159 to -166. 76% of the tickets, 86% of the cash. So a little bit of cash discrepancy on the Florida side. I don't even know if I can comment on any of these. I'm just throwing out what I see for the numbers up here. You can go look it up on pregame yourself to see what the market looks like in these. But I'm not going to comment on it really. I guess I have a slight lean to Florida on that one. I guess just because it looks like the money is coming in a little bit on them. Washington and the New York Rangers. The Rangers are a huge favorite, up from -225 to -228. 93% of the tickets, 99% of the cash, which I doubt is actually accurate. But I think the Rangers are an overvalued team coming into this playoff season. I mean, they're the team that is the President's Trophy winner, meaning they had the best record in the entire league this season. The last 8 teams who have won that, including my Bruins last year, unfortunately, have lost in the first round of the playoffs. So that is not a very good sign for the Rangers. And I think it seems like I think that team that gets that number 1 spot always has like a target on their back, so their opponents are really gunning for them. But then, in addition to that, it just seems like for whatever reason, that team that gets that top spot just tends to be kind of overvalued. I think that's the case with the Rangers. Their metrics aren't really that good this year. I don't know if that's going to really come into play in this series. I don't actually think the Rangers are going to lose this series. I think it is too much of a mismatch, but like later on, like I think the Rangers are being overpicked in all these like brackets and stuff. Like people picking them to win the whole thing and whatever. I don't believe that that's going to happen. I think when they run into a team that plays more physical, plays better defense like Carolina, I think the Rangers could be in a little bit of trouble there. And then the game that I'll be on, I'm just talking about all these games in order. Colorado, Winnipeg. I'm going to be on Colorado in this one. As weird as that might look, Winnipeg's really plummeting from a minus 140 favorite. I don't know if it was ever actually minus 140 anywhere. It says so in pregame, but down to minus 108. These teams played once in Winnipeg this season. Winnipeg was minus 120, and Colorado was like around a minus 150 favorite when they played at home. So it's the market kind of indicating that Colorado, they're telling you that Colorado's actually the better team here. So that seems a little bit weird because, of course, Winnipeg is the home team here. They finished ahead of Colorado in the standings, and we just saw Winnipeg blast Colorado 7-0 with like a few games left in the season. The last time these two teams met up, Winnipeg destroyed them. Winnipeg is 3-0 against Colorado this year, and they've dominated them on the scoreboard, at least in every game, winning 7-0, 6-2, and 4-2, I believe. So it just looks completely crazy. Colorado's only scored 4 goals in 3 games against this Winnipeg team and been outscored, whatever I just said, 17-4, I think, in those 3 games, something like that. So nobody, no like public better, recreational better is going to want to come in on the Colorado side here, seeing that Winnipeg just annihilated them 7-0. Winnipeg has destroyed them all 3 times they played them this year. They're the home team here. 65% of the tickets on Winnipeg, 53% of the cash, though, on the other side on Colorado. Looks like a pros versus Joes situation. And I'm siding with the pros here, obviously. I think that this is a little bit, I think that those 3 results, all of them are actually a little bit misleading. The books are still telling you Colorado's actually the better team here. If you look at the futures odds, Colorado has better odds to make it deeper into the tournament, into the playoffs, etc. The books are telling you that Colorado is actually the better team here. And looking at the box scores of those 3 other games, even though Winnipeg won all 3, Colorado outshot them in all 3. They won the faceoff percentage in all 3, including, I believe, in one of those games, Colorado won 72% of faceoffs or something. I don't know how they lost, winning that many of the faceoffs. Faceoff percentage tends to be a decent indicator, and Colorado had more hits in every one of those games too. So Colorado, the more physical team, even though you'd think that Winnipeg would be because they play a lot of these low-scoring games. You kind of think, oh, that means they're a tough physical defensive team. But that's not really the case with Winnipeg. Winnipeg has the best goaltender in the league. That's for sure. But other than that, I don't think that they're that physical of a team, really. And I think they can tend to get a little bit soft at times. And you've seen that their defense has been a little bit worse in the later parts of the season. They were allowing more goals than they were throughout most of the season. So I like Colorado here, man. And I don't know if there's any more to explain about that, but I just think it's going to be one of those spots where Colorado is going to be the team that has the adjustments to make. Everything about it is a little bit misleading as far as what we saw during the regular season when these two teams met up. I think Colorado sneakily is actually the better of those two teams. So I'm going to be on the Avalanche in that one. You can get it at sort of an underdog price. Minus 105, I think, might be the best you can do right now, which still is indicating that Winnipeg is a small favorite right now, kind of around like minus 115 in that range. Colorado, you can get minus 105, so we'll do that. We'll move over to and then Nashville, Vancouver are playing too. Oh, oops, sorry. Vancouver's down from -150 to -138. So it looks like there is money coming in on Nashville, even though I see 77% of the tickets on Vancouver and 92% of the cash on Vancouver. It looks like they have the cash discrepancy, but the line movement is in conflict with that. As the line's moving down on Vancouver, that would indicate to me that there is some money coming in on the Nashville side there, and I guess that would be the way that I would lean in that one slightly. I think Nashville, I mean, everybody knows like kind of the name Vancouver. Vancouver put up a really good season. Of course, they're one of the one seeds there where Nashville's coming in as the wild card, but Nashville was the top of the two wild cards. And I think Nashville's just kind of flying under the radar because they weren't as good earlier in the season, and then they really started to turn it on, man. And they have one of the best goalies in the league too, Saros, and I think they're a more balanced team as well. So Nashville's kind of dangerous, man. So that one, yeah, I could see Nashville giving Vancouver some problems there. Moving on to the NBA, we can talk about what did we see out of the NBA yesterday? Well, we saw my leans in the early games actually did all right. Cleveland, my lean on the total and on the side in this one were correct. This game was Cleveland-Orlando, very low-scoring game. Played more, I think, kind of the pace that Cleveland kind of wants to. And Cleveland, the more experienced team, they were able to win that game by double digits pretty easily. So congratulations to them. Minnesota completely blew out Phoenix for my play there on Minnesota, even though Phoenix has really had Minnesota's number in the recent few years, including season sweeping them this year. But Minnesota was able to make the adjustments they needed to make in that first game. Anthony Edwards had a really good game against a team that's given him a lot of problems. I still kind of think Phoenix is actually going to win that series, but Minnesota was able to get the job done there and pretty much a blowout. So a nice first game for Minnesota there and putting up a good defensive performance. That game wound up going over the total, I think, by like one bucket right near the end in garbage time there. It looked like it was most likely not going to go over, and I think it wound up doing so. The Knicks in Philadelphia, very strange game, kind of a game of quarters where Philadelphia, I think, completely dominated the odd quarters. I mean, the first and the third. And Philadelphia, I believe, went into the fourth quarter with a pretty big lead there, and they were winning outright as well as covering, of course. And then the Knicks had a really good fourth quarter. I didn't see what happened in the game, but the Knicks wound up coming away with a win and a cover in that one, even though it looked like Philly was going to probably come out of there with a win as far as it looked like. Pretty deep into that game, Philadelphia with a pretty big lead, but the Knicks played pretty well in that game, it looks like, and I think they were able to stifle Embiid in that one, it looks like, based on the box score. So, a good game for the Knicks. That was a game where the Knicks are actually the Knicks are actually way ahead. Philly was way ahead early in the game, and the Knicks are actually way ahead into the third quarter until Philly really turned it on and took the lead. It looks like so. Philly, I guess, did not have like a giant lead in that one. I thought they had a bigger lead. They did have some lead in the fourth quarter, but it wasn't as big as I thought. But they wound up not being able to win that game. The Knicks, like I said, being able to take Embiid out of the equation to a large extent. Embiid did not put up a good performance. He scored 29 points still, but his rebound numbers were down, 8 for 22 from the floor. The Knicks were able to slow him down enough to get that done. And then the LA Lakers actually put up a decent showing in game one, kind of. They were able to kind of hang in that game, but Denver still, once they got going, I mean, the Lakers looked like they were winning early on, but then Denver kind of turned it on in the second half and never gave the lead back. Denver was able to kind of just extend the lead a little bit by bit, and wind up winning by double digits and kind of an expected game there. But I thought LA was going to be able to hang and like cover that number there potentially, but that did not happen. So I was wrong with my leans on those late two games there. We move on to today in the NBA. I have one play here in the NBA. I'm hiding my plays that I have today in this video. Maybe I should start like putting those like YouTube segments on the video or something. But I'm so all over the place. It'd be very difficult to do. But I do list the plays that I talk about in the description of these videos. But you have to dig like into the video to actually find my analysis. Maybe I should split them up into separate videos. I don't know, but I don't like to do that because I like to kind of just go over the board and talk about everything. NBA, I'm going to the Celtics game, which I'm going to have to leave like fairly soon, actually, to get up there. It's happening in 4 hours, man. Oh, God. Celtics are a giant favorite, up from 13 to 14. I think I saw some 14.5s at some points. 68% of the tickets, 69% of the cash. So even though they're a massive favorite and they're kind of public, it looks like they still have the line moving in their direction and a little bit of the cash discrepancy. Heat, of course, have no Jimmy Butler. It's going to be their second game without Jimmy Butler. Maybe the line is over-adjusted to the Butler injury, but I'm not entirely so sure about that. We saw the Heat able to play pretty well in the first game without Butler. That was kind of an injured player theory spot, and it was against the Chicago Bulls, who aren't really that good. Heat coming in here now, and I think the Celtics do have a somewhat of a disadvantage in the fact that they haven't played for a week at this point. So the Heat, having played multiple games in the play-in tournament there, whatever you want to call it, in the multiple play-in games there, I think that is a little bit of an advantage to the Heat as far as momentum is concerned, because the Celtics haven't played for so long. It's possible the Celtics kind of start a little bit slow in this game, so the Heat might have a little bit of an advantage there early, but I think the Celtics are probably just going to be too much for them, especially the Heat without Butler. And the other thing that points in the direction of the Celtics is this is playoff revenge, man. The Heat, as we all know, beat the Celtics when the Celtics were a favorite in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Celtics were the home favorite and lost the first 3 games to the Heat in that series, and then pushed it to Game 7 and almost became the first team to win after being down 3-0 in an NBA series. That's never happened. The NBA, it's by far the toughest sport to do that in, because it's a game where teams win by a lot. It's a game where a lot of points are scored. So those victory margins, so that tends to favor the better team more than it does in other sports. But the Celtics had it in their grasp, man. Game 7, and Tatum got hurt right near the beginning of the game. And they wound up having a terrible game in that game and losing. Celtics, of course, they're not going to forget that, man. So I think the Celtics have plenty of reason to be focused in this one, other than the fact that, yeah, it's the first playoff game. And when you're a big favorite, you could overlook your opponent. But I think working in the Celtics' favor there a little bit is that fact that it is revenge. They know this is the team that knocked them out last year. So that is one of the only revenge type of scenarios that actually matters. So I do think that the Celtics do have reason to kind of be focused in that one, even though the Heat do have the momentum edge there a little bit. So I don't know what to think about that one. Obviously, I'm not going to have a play in that game. The other of the afternoon games, the Western later afternoon game, is Mavericks Clippers. The Mavs have flipped from a 1.5 point favorite, a 1.5 point dog, to a 3-point favorite. Clippers being at home, obviously, you would think they should be the favorite, although even when they were the favorite, the books are actually kind of indicating that Dallas is actually the better team out of these two. But the line has moved so much because Kawhi Leonard, I believe, is not going to play for the Clippers, and they need him bad, man. I would say he's still basically their best defensive player. And without him on the floor, yeah, they have James Harden. I mean, Harden can score a lot, but he's getting old, and I don't think that I think he's kind of a chemistry problem. He seems to just disrupt chemistry wherever he goes, which is why he doesn't stick with a team for that long. Even though he is a very talented shooter, he also just is not very good defensively. Clippers could be at a disadvantage without Kawhi Leonard out there, man. And this line makes it seem like Kawhi Leonard is not going to be in there because the Mavericks would not be this much of a favorite otherwise. The Clippers would probably be a slight favorite, but the books are still telling you the Mavs actually are kind of an underrated commodity in some ways, and actually maybe the better team here. And the Mavs, I think, are actually favored to win the series. So kind of interesting here where you actually had some lower seeds in the NBA playoffs here actually favored in the market to win the series, and those are Dallas, Phoenix, although I think after losing game 1, Phoenix probably is no longer favored to win that series. But going into that series, they were the Pacers, which I'll talk about in a minute, which maybe I don't entirely agree with on that one. And then the other one, the Sixers, Knicks. The Knicks are the favorite, especially now that they won. But going into the series, they were still the favorite to win that series, but it was actually very, very close. Knicks versus 76ers. And it does seem like in some ways, it does seem like the public is actually on the Knicks, especially after game 1, or excuse me, it seems like the public is on the 76ers, because they like Joel Embiid and whatever. And that the professional bettors actually, I see a decent amount of them actually coming in on the Knicks, and I disagreed with them on that first game there And I kind of disagreed with them on the series, too, because I actually think the 76ers are the better team, and they actually have a little bit of an experience edge, too. But there are a lot of professionals who disagree with me, and they wound up being right in game one, even though the 76ers definitely had opportunities to win and cover in that one. So we'll see about that. That one is the one that confuses me the most, man. It disrupts my way of thinking, throws me off a little bit. The Sixers-Knicks series, where Sixers being a 7 seed and being only a very small underdog coming into the series. To me, it seemed like 76ers are being a little bit undervalued because of being without Joel Embiid for 2 months during the season or whatever. Now he's back, and that I actually think they're the second best team in the conference, but we'll see, because they might wind up actually not beating the Knicks there. So what do we got here? Yeah, all right. So Mavericks, Clippers. Yeah, Mavs, 75% of the tickets, 62% of the cash. So they are a public road favorite, it looks like now, with the cash discrepancy kind of going against them. But the money is coming to move them to a 3-point favorite. But like I said, some of that I think is because Kawhi Leonard is out. And for the Mavericks, you got to keep an eye on they have, well, of course, Luka Doncic, who's like their best player. Luka, and then Kyrie Irving, I think, are both on the injury report, and those are two of their better players, obviously. Luka, obviously, their best player. So you're going to want those guys to be in there, of course. And when those guys are in, this is a pretty dangerous Dallas team, man. But it seems like based on this number, I would expect that Luka is probably playing in this one. I don't know about Kyrie Irving. We'll have to see. So this is one I don't quite want to get involved in, because I kind of like the Mavs side, but I don't like the fact that the market, like the public, is on them. The cash discrepancy is kind of against them. So I don't like any of that. They're a little bit public. But I do think that they're the less kind of discombobulated team, too. Like, I think the Clippers have just been massively inconsistent. It seems like Harden may not be a positive for them, and I don't think he was a positive for the 76ers either. So there's kind of a lot going on there. Even though the Clippers might have a little bit of the experience edge there, I don't know about that one, man. And whoever comes out of that series could, especially if it's Dallas, I think could pose some problems for the Thunder as well. So we'll see what happens there. Pacers-Bucks is the game I'm actually on here. I think this line has gone too far, man. Pacers have flipped from a 3-point dog now to a 1-point favorite. They have 66% of the tickets on them, 64% of the cash on the other side on the Bucks. So this looks like a pros versus Joes situation. The public looks like they're coming in on the Pacers. They love the fact that the Pacers score a ton of points. They have Tyrese Halliburton, very, very good on offense. However, they're not good on defense, and I think they're at a big experience disadvantage here. So this is why I'm going to be making a play on the Bucks here, part of it. I'm going to go with the team that has more experience and the team that just has looked like ass down the stretch. The Pacers won a bunch of their remaining games, but they had to, because they were battling for playoff seeding. They were battling to avoid the play-in. Milwaukee was like guaranteed one of the top few seeds, guaranteed a home series with like a few games to go. So that explains a little bit of why they didn't play well down the stretch. And they were missing Giannis for some of those games, and they are missing him in this game as well. But I think the line's kind of overreacting to it, even though he did not play in the previous game as well. So it's not one of those games where it's the first game with him out, but he's been in and out of the lineup. So it's like, I think it's just the Bucks are just used to him not having him here at this point. So I do kind of think the Bucks, just because they're the better team, they have more experience, more playoff experience. They have the coach with playoff experience, although it's Doc Rivers. And I don't know why the Bucks fired Adrian Griffin when they were doing really well during the season, and then after they got Doc Rivers, they've been worse. But I think these guys all have the experience making runs in the playoffs, man. So I do think that that's going to be the deciding factor here, and I think you're getting the Bucks as a you can get them at a 1.5 point underdog now at home, man. It's like you're getting the team that's actually the better team. Even without Giannis, I still kind of think the wrong team is favored here. This is telling you the Bucks would probably be about a 3-point favorite if Giannis was playing. I think it should be more like in the 4.5 range or something like that. And I think that this line without him, I think should still be like maybe Bucks -1 here. I expect the Bucks to turn it on. The Pacers, this is new territory for them, man. Unfamiliar territory. Kind of like with the Magic. I mentioned they're a young team, haven't been in the playoffs for a long time. So I think that's also the case with the Pacers here. So I like the Bucks in that one, and the Bucks are the better defense as well. They're the better defense, and you're getting points with them at home. And I think they're still actually the better team as well. Well, maybe without Giannis, they're the slightly worse team, but with the home court, I still think that they should probably be favored. Maybe you could argue they are still the better team here, but it looks like the public's coming in on the side of the Pacers. The Pacers, because of the Giannis stuff, the Pacers are actually favored on the series price too to win the series. I'm not so sure about that. In a 7-game series, I think the experience also wins out there. So I actually do think the Bucks are still going to win this series. This did kind of happen last year to the Bucks, though, where they had Giannis not playing in some of the games in the series. He was in and out, and they wound up losing to the Miami Heat, although it was a pretty close series. Actually, I don't know. Maybe the Heat won in fewer than 7 games. I think maybe I don't even know, but the Bucks might also remember that being the case last year and be ready for this. And probably this Pacers team, I don't think is as good as last year's Heat team either. The Pacers, really one of the worst teams defensively, and they like to push the pace. Very apt style of play for the Indiana Pacers, being a team that likes to really push the pace and play fast. The Bucks may be able to slow them down, especially you don't look for pace and collisions that much in the NBA. It's more of a college basketball thing, but here the Bucks are the team that wants to play the slower, more defensive game, and I think being at home, they might be able to do that and slow the pace down and throw the Pacers out of their style of game that they actually want to play because they like to play fast. So I'm going to be on the Milwaukee Bucks plus 1.5 in that one. And then in the final game at night, Pelicans Thunder. Thunder up from 7 to 8. 83% of the tickets on them, only 75% of the cash. Thunder, they're a young team, man, and they're not used to being in this position. I don't know how used to even being in the playoffs they are. I think they only have a few guys who have even played in the playoffs before. They're a very young team, very inexperienced as well, though the Pelicans are pretty inexperienced too. But I actually think the Thunder might be I think the Thunder are actually even less experienced than the Pelicans are. So it's interesting. And the Thunder are going to have a little bit of more of a target on their back, too, because they are the 1 seed. They're not used to being in anything close to this position. So I do think they're a little bit of an overrated 1 seed, which in my bracket, I have Denver winning the West. I think Denver's the best team in the West. And I think the bracket sets up okay for Denver, I think. And I actually have the Thunder, I think, losing to Dallas in my bracket. So I do think the Thunder could run into some problems here. And I think the Pelicans actually have the ability to draw out this series too, even without Zion. As I explained when I was on the Pelicans in the game against Sacramento, although the Pelicans dominate Sacramento, and Sacramento's not really that good, Pelicans actually don't play that much worse with Zion. You could actually argue they play better without Zion, which is crazy to say because he's a really good player and does a lot of good things for them, but they actually score slightly more without him, and they allow significantly fewer points without him in there, which is really bizarre to think. But they are used to not having him play. He will not be playing in this. I don't know when he's scheduled to even potentially come back. He's obviously out, which is also kind of why the line is shot up on the Thunder even further. I think the line's gone too far, though. I think it's too high. I like the Pelicans to cover in this one. It's not going to quite be a play for me, but I think it's the second strongest out of the plays today. So I do like the Pelicans for all those reasons. I think you're getting a little bit of benefit on the line because of that injury, even though this is now going to be their second game without him. And I think they also have the momentum edge because they just played. Oh, man, I feel like I'm talking myself into a play on the Pelicans. Nah, I'm not going to quite do it just because I don't think the experience edge is there, but I do like them. It's almost strong enough. So you kind of know where I'm kind of weighing the strengths on these sides here. So the Pelicans, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say, what else I was going to say there, but they played 2 games in the play-in, whereas the Thunder have been off for like a week, similar to what I was talking about with the Celtics. And I think when a team has been off for so long, they could come in cold, especially when it's a situation where the Thunder might even overlook the Pelicans because the Thunder are the 1 seed. They don't have that much of a reason. Like the Celtics have revenge against the Heat. The Thunder don't have that coming into play here. So it's possible they come out cold and maybe like lapsing in focus a little bit, whereas the Pelicans just played 2 games in the play, and so they have momentum right now. So I think that's actually an advantage to the Pelicans as well. So the way that I weigh the strengths of these, I weigh the Bucks side the heaviest, obviously, because I'm playing them. Then I would say the Pelicans plus the points. So the Bucks plus 1.5 being the strongest. That's a play. Something that I think is, if you want to play the Pelicans, I obviously would not mind that. I made it. It was close to being a play for me, so I like the Pelicans plus the points. That would be the second strongest. Then I would say the Mavericks, even though they're laying 3 on the road. I would actually say Dallas -3, but you got to look at the personnel there. That's if Kawhi is not playing and Luka is playing, basically. I would say that would be it. And then actually probably the Celtics minus the huge point total, but that wouldn't be something that I really want to get involved in. That amount of points is just insane. But I do think the revenge motive is strong, and I do think they're the significantly better team. So we'll see what happens in that one. And then moving over to MLB, as I already mentioned at the beginning of the video, there were a couple of totals. We're finishing off with a nice, easy MLB here. We can relax a little bit and talk about MLB. Those couple of totals that I like, I just can't quite get there with just because the bullpen situations are just awful, and I don't feel like playing first 5 innings, really. I think I should stick to full game totals here. That's been just totally dominant for me. But today I actually have 2 sides in Major League Baseball. And let's see, one of them is going to be in the afternoon slate, and that's going to be on the Detroit Tigers. This feels a little bit wild to me, a little bit dangerous, but I'm going to do it. This is against Minnesota. Minnesota looks like they're up slightly from -115 to -116. I'm not sure about that line movement because it looks like 61% of the tickets are on Detroit, but 77% of the cash on Detroit. So the public's coming in on Detroit. Even though Minnesota was a playoff team last year, Detroit has the better record, and they are a road slight underdog here. And I think you can get them at, looks like you can get them even money right now. I think +100. I don't like the fact the public is coming in on Detroit, but it looks like there is money coming in. It looks like the cash discrepancy is on the Detroit side, and I actually agree with it in this matchup. I like the starting pitching matchup and the bullpen situation in this one, actually. So even though, the public is saying, well, we're getting the team with the better record as the underdog here. Yeah, that's all true, but I think the matchup just dictates a play on Detroit here. I think the public's not always wrong, man, all right? We look at what these teams did yesterday. Minnesota won a 1-run game, 4-3. They lost a 1-run game. So this has been a close series, man. And I believe this is going to be the rubber match. I don't think these teams are playing tomorrow, but I'm not sure. That's another thing you have to look. On Sunday games, you can look to see, is this team going to have a look ahead to like a bigger series in the next series? I don't have that coming into play in either of my games today, but that is also something to consider on Sundays in baseball, like especially if you have a team that's about to potentially complete a sweep here, so they might overlook the team that they're playing because they've already won all the other games in the series and they have a big game up next. That tends to be a situation where you can look to go against that team, but I still think you want to focus on the matchup does still matter. Like you don't want to just play on a situation like that if the pitching matchup is bad for it. So here in yesterday's game, the Twins, I believe, used way more of their bullpen than Detroit did to stave off Detroit because it was, as I said, a 4-3 win for Minnesota yesterday. That was a game where, Ober pitched pretty well in the game, but then Minnesota had to use a bunch of their relievers. I don't know what the deal was with that. Reese Olson didn't pitch terribly for the Tigers either, and they wound up only using 2 relievers. Even though Olson only went 5 innings, the Tigers pitching only had to go 8 innings because the Twins were already winning going into the bottom of the 9th, so it didn't matter. They're actually winning 4-0, and then they give up 3 runs. So the Minnesota bullpen came in and gave up some runs and didn't do, and they had to use a bunch of them. They used a bunch of them for only small stints, kind of, but most of them threw enough pitches that they're probably not going to play in this game. So Detroit pretty much saved their entire bullpen. And having that one fewer inning to have to even pitch there. Detroit only had 2 relievers pitch. The Twins had 5, and it was like kind of all their better pitchers too. The back end of their bullpen came in. A few of them gave up runs. They had to come in and get the save as well. So the Twins bullpen, I think, has got to be at a disadvantage here after that, using 3 more relievers than the Tigers did. You don't see that often. So those pitchers are going to tend to be unavailable in the next game. So the Twins look like a lot of their better relievers are not going to be available in this game, whereas Detroit seems like the best of their relievers probably will be available because they did not really use them yesterday. They only used those 2 relievers to just finish off the game after they were losing. So that sets up a decent spot for the bullpen spotter. And I think the bullpens they tend to be undervalued in these baseball lines. You can find some edges where you see a team whose bullpen is in bad shape, and you can find some value going against those teams because the starting pitching matchup gets weighed more heavily. Although I do think the starting pitching matchup, of course, does matter as well. Both of those things matter. The starting pitching, I think, matches more than the bullpen still, but I think when you find a bullpen situation like that, it can give you that extra edge to put that over the top, or, oh yeah, I'm going to play this game. Starting pitching matchup, Detroit has Casey Mize pitching. Both of these pitchers are young guys. Mize, 26 years old. His stats not great. 4.1 ERA this year, 1.17 WHIP. His stats on his career right around that, really. 4.28 ERA, 1.21 WHIP over his career. He's really only had one full season, though. He's been on Detroit for his whole career since 2020. He's been a starter for his entire career as well. He only had a full season in 2021. And other than that, maybe he was dealing with injuries or something. But that season, he actually did pretty well. 3.71 ERA, 1.14 WHIP. So I think looking at that season is the best indicator that we have about like what this guy really is. And his stats this season are kind of pretty close to that so far as he's getting going and having a few starts under his belt. So I like all that. He's not really a strikeout pitcher, so I don't like that. In his career, he has 160 strikeouts and 204 innings pitched. So he's not a guy that comes in and dominates, really. He has 59 walks, which that's a little bit high, but not horrible. 2.7 strikeout walk ratio, somewhat low. But the rest of his stats, even though he's not a strikeout guy, he has been pretty good. So it looks like he does have stuff where he can like limit the opponent run totals here. This year, he has not allowed more than 3 earned runs in any start. That was his first start against the Mets. So coming into the season, maybe it could have been a little bit nervous. Maybe, I don't know. It's your first game of the season. He gave up 3 runs and 4 and a third in that one. That was not a great performance. But then in the other 2 games, he's been getting better in each start. He went 5 innings against the Pirates, allowing 2 earned runs. Only 2 strikeouts and a walk in that one. And then against Texas, the best offense that he faced so far this year, he had his best performance. 6 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, allowed 6 strikeouts and no walks. So he's been improving start to start, it looks like. So you like to see that when a guy has been trending in the right direction. In that last start, a 6.0 strikeout walk ratio, it looks pretty good to me. 12-3 on the season, that's not bad. In 15 and a third innings, the strikeout numbers, again, a little bit low, but a good strikeout walk ratio, pretty good. And he's limited the opposing run totals a bit. That 4 ERA might even be a little bit misleading with the fact that he really has been pretty consistent in allowing few runs in each start. So I like that. I think he has the ability to keep these opposing hitters in check. And looking at his stats versus these Twins hitters, they're only 6 for 34 off of him lifetime, man, with 1 extra base hit, which is a double. So they only have 5 guys who have faced him before, but still that's like a decent chunk of their lineup has seen him before, and that's a 176 batting average against him. So he's actually been pretty good against Minnesota. He does have 7 strikeouts and 8 walks against him, so that's not good. That's a bad strikeout walk ratio, but they have not been able to hit him, so that's good. So that seems to be his thing, really. Like, he's got to get those. I actually don't think he typically walks that many guys either. He just doesn't strike guys out, but he really doesn't allow many hits. So that seems to be that's like his thing, and it seems like it's consistent enough in his stats so far that you can see, well, he is decent, that he doesn't allow that many hits, and that's a 539 OPS, by the way, for Minnesota's hitters against him, so pretty low there. So Minnesota's offensive stats, not very good. Their offense really isn't that great. I think it's possible you could argue Detroit has the better hitting in this game here. Mize has the decent stats against Minnesota there, except for the strikeout walk numbers. Then you got Louis Varland over the other side for the Minnesota Twins. Actually, neither of these pitchers have faced the entire opponent's lineup, actually. So both of these pitchers have only been seen by some of the opposing hitters, and in limited, it is a limited sample size, sure. But Varland is pitching. I've been saying that Varland is all right and wanting to like play on him, but I don't know, man. I think those days may be a little bit over. He's got an 8.36 ERA so far this year, 2.07 WHIP, which also kind of explains probably why the public is going against them, but I don't think there's anything that misleading. I mean, he's not as bad as those numbers suggest. Mize's numbers are pretty indicative of what he is, but Varland, I think he's probably slightly worse than Mize is, but not as bad as what these numbers are. But he has not been pitching well, even though he did have a 6.0 strikeout walk ratio in his most recent game against the Orioles. So that's good. And 16-5 on the season, even that's not bad, really. 14 innings pitched, 16 strikeouts, that's also not bad. But he's given up 24 hits, 5 home runs, and 13 earned runs. He's been getting absolutely rocked. He's allowed 3 or more earned runs in every start. So he started out allowing 3 earned runs in 4 innings against Milwaukee, similar to Mize's first start in the stats there. But then he got worse basically after that in the next 2 starts, whereas Mize got better. So I don't like any of that for Varland, really. And then on his career, his stats just are ugly, man. An ERA 4.92, a WHIP of 1.33, although he has less of a sample size that we're working with here. has only been in the league since 2022. He's also 26, same as Mize. He had made 10 starts last year, which is the most that he's made. And last year, 4.63 ERA, pretty bad, really, not great at all. 1.22 whip wasn't that bad, though. And a 71-17 strikeout walk ratio, that was actually pretty good last year, but I don't know, man. I'm not convinced that he's really that good. Mize has been allowing very few hits, whereas Varland has been allowing a lot of hits. And versus the Tigers, only 4 guys have seen him before, but they are 6 for 12 off him with a triple and 2 home runs. So 3 extra base hits in only 12 at bats. He has 1 strikeout, no walks against him, but that's a 500 batting average and a 1,667 OPS. I mean, very limited sample size, but still. Mize has been kind of unhittable when he's faced these Minnesota hitters, and Varland has been very, very hittable by these Tigers hitters. A little small sample size, but he's gotten rocked. So we'll see what happens there, but we'll be on Detroit getting the small underdog price there, and then I'm going to be on Seattle as we got I skipped the game yesterday. 2 nights ago, I was on Emerson Hancock for Seattle, and it was a return home spot for Colorado. But then yesterday, of course, Colorado had that 1 extra day off to get rid of those return home distractions a little bit, so I didn't want to get involved in the game yesterday. Colorado still, of course, lost because they suck. Then Seattle actually did not start Hancock. They actually pushed his start back, and it's going to be in this game. Actually, I'm talking about the night game for Seattle, because this is a doubleheader, actually. So Seattle, I think they also have the edge in the first game with Kirby pitching against Quantrill. Kirby, the much better pitcher there, but Seattle is a huge favorite in that one. So I think we're getting value on Seattle in the night game, though, even though they're probably, they're the better team in both of these matchups, obviously, and have the better pitcher in both. But I think the value comes in on this pitcher who you don't know who he is, Emerson Hancock. It's down from -150 to -131 on the money line. Don't really see any of the stats yet. Peter Lambert is having to pitch for Colorado here because I think this is basically the makeup game for that rain delay the other day. He's not a very good pitcher. He has a 2.31 ERA this year, so people are going to look at that and think, oh, that means he's actually good, right? No, I don't think so, because he's actually been a reliever and he's having to make a spot start here. So that's a totally different scenario, man. When you're a reliever and you get thrust into a spot start like this, he has started some games on his career for Colorado, but his numbers are just ugly in his career, man. So the 2.31 ERA misleading on the season here. A 1.46 whip is awful, indicative that his ERA should be way higher. On his career, 6.22 ERA, 1.51 whip, nothing to like about that. 72 walks and 141 strikeouts and 194 innings pitched. Doesn't strike out a lot of guys, walks way too many. That's a 2 strikeout walk ratio, also not good. And then versus these Seattle hitters, I haven't really seen him that much, but they're 5 for 13 off him with a double, a triple, 2 home runs. So 4 out of the 5 are extra base hits. He does have a 3.0 strikeout walk ratio against them, whatever, though. Small sample size, but it's a 385 batting average amongst these 4 Mariners hitters who have seen him before. 1,462 OPS. That's just terrible for Lambert. He is obviously the worst pitcher in this one. I think we're just getting value here on Emerson Hancock because, yet again, like I say, he's a young guy who just hasn't really been seen before by them. His stats this year misleading: 7.98 ERA, 1.43 whip. But that's all because he had 1 really bad start against the Brewers. In his other 2 starts, he had a 9-1. He had a 5.1 strikeout walk ratio, which isn't that great, but he only allowed 3 and 2 earned runs in those. So he's been better, and I think he maybe has been improving. He had a much better performance in that under that I had in the game where he lost to the Chicago Cubs, but he pitched pretty well in that game. So he's been maybe getting the hang of being in the majors. He was a decently high draft pick, and like I always say, the pitcher has an edge when the opposing hitters haven't seen him before, and he has good stuff, and I think that's the case with Hancock. So we're getting value there, and the way I'm going to play this is you could play the money line somewhere in like the -140 something range, but I'm going to lay the 1 run line here and take that down to -125 so that if they win by 1, you get the push instead. So Seattle, run line -1, -125. Got to rush it, but that's going to do it for me, man. NBA today, Milwaukee, +1.5. NHL is going to be whatever. What did I say? I was on Colorado -105. And an MLB, Detroit Tigers +100. And Seattle run line -1, -125. Let's get it done, man. Go Celtics, because I'll be going to that game too. Peace.